Good evening, family. My name is Phineas Waha Sebazana. Welcome to Leaning In with Dr. Marlon. Let me welcome the man of the hour without wasting any time. Sir, how are you?
Phineas. Wow.
We're here.
Awesome.
Back again. How was your day?
Awesome. It was good.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was. Well, the entire week last week was great.
Yeah, coming out of Easter weekend.
Absolutely.
Do you still feel like you have a hangover from that?
I've got a pickled fish hangover. Here and there, my clothes still smell like hot cross buns.
I still need to learn how to make that fish.
I'll show you.
Can you make it?
Absolutely. I make it every year.
You make it every year?
Yes. I love it.
I need to visit you next Easter.
Yeah, we can have a practice.
I had different taste of it over the weekend because, I had some at Twisana Home and then at New Hope.
Yes.
And it was made by different people. And I think everybody makes it different.
They do.
They
and
do.
And it's according to taste.
According to taste.
Yes. Families taste things differently.
Yeah.
And it becomes a specialty.
How would women make it better though?
Right, you haven't been to my house.
Anyway, family, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We're going to be with you from now on until 7 on the dot. Again, having a very interesting conversation based on Dr. Marlon's book called Academia and Spirituality, an amazing book that I've been reading for the past few weeks. And I think you should read it to really understand what we're actually talking about on this show. We are doing chapter 4 of your book today. Kind of. A little bit of maybe chapter 3 because we didn't finish some of the questions from last week. And I really want to say to all our listeners, we really appreciate you engaging with us. And thank you so much for really engaging with us with messages last week. We really appreciate it. I'm so sorry that we didn't get to read some of them, but we really appreciate you getting involved in the conversation that we're going to be talking about. I mean, we spoke about purpose last week, and from purpose, I think to today we're moving into business and purpose. But before we go into that, I think you want to say something.
Yes. WhatsApp number?
Yeah.
061 798 1075.
Yeah, and the reason why we're sharing that is because we don't want to turn this into our show with Dr. Marlon. I think we want you to be part of this because we also want to learn from you because we're all learning together through his book. And like I said, tonight we're focusing on purpose and entrepreneurship and business, which is very interesting.
Yes.
But let's do a little bit of a recap about...
But just before we get there, I would like to share my condolences and our condolences to all our Catholic brothers and sisters with the passing of Papa Francis.
The
Holy Father passing away.
I've been today actually with my pastor, was speaking about his life and what he stood for, especially for the poor and the oppressed. But also, it was very interesting to read up about how he wants to be buried.
Wow!
Because
amazing.
He wants a simple coffin and not to be buried in a Catholic, spectacular way, but actually to be buried with simplicity. The marginalized and the poor. And one of the things that I've heard that he wants to be buried amongst those who are prostitute and homeless. He doesn't want to be buried with the elite. And I was like, wow. That's
next level.
A lot.
It speaks about the man's entire life.
Wow. But anyway, let's move a little bit into purpose. I think let's define that a little bit just to bring everybody back into what we've been speaking about. I think there's some couple of things that we didn't finish really well when it comes to purpose. Let's bring people back from what we spoke about last week into the purpose behind business.
Yes. So I think let's start off with purpose. Yeah. And just to recap.
Yeah.
Purpose lies within you. Cannot be found outside. Cannot be found existentially. Can't be found outside of the person. Marlon's purpose is within. Then we reflected on the Jesus giving that sort of making the statement.
Yes.
The kingdom is within you. So my purpose is within me. The one thing that drives me. And I think what brought about and where our discussion leads to is when he says, when his mother and his father's looking for him and he's 12 years old and he says, come on guys, can't you see I'm in my father's business?
Was he 12 or 13 when
he
he
was
said
12
that?
years old.
Wow. Imagine.
And they
At
traveled.
12, you already know your purpose.
And he drove. They left already. They thought he was somewhere with their friends. But he had a purpose.
He had a purpose.
And he was working on that purpose at the age of 12.
Wow.
So that
it's something that is found within,
yes,
not something that we have to go outside to find.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate, 12 years old, and it means that purpose does not look for age. It's not age driven. It's not age attached to age.
So you can be 60 and then still
have no purpose.
Whew.
You can be laying on
I think we spoke about it's not how long you have lived, it's about how well you have lived.
The awareness of that living. You know?
But I also like the idea of purpose being found within us, because it speaks a lot about identity.
Yes.
I mean, if you don't know your identity, how can you know your purpose?
Yeah. How can you know yourself? And it's not the identity that others give. That's important.
It's the one that you were born with.
It's the one that I embrace. And I struggled with that. I struggled with Marlon's identity of who Marlon is.
I mean, you're a doctor. I'm sure you have to go through a lot to find who you are.
Well, let me just say that I've ignored it all my life.
Ooh.
I've ignored it.
Yeah. So some people can know their purpose and ignore it.
Absolutely. Okay, I wasn't really...
You sound like Jonah a little bit there.
Yeah, look, it was one of those things where no, man, it's not like that.
Okay.
You know, it's like this. You know, I prefer my purpose to be this.
I'm called to this, not that.
Yeah.
Or these people, not those people.
Yeah, and you know, you go, man, why, Mom, why are you talking about my purpose like this and like that? I have my purpose.
And sometimes parents can tell, you know, this is what, you know.
Absolutely.
This is what makes you happy.
Absolutely.
But if it doesn't make you money, it can make you happy.
Look, that's the, I always wanted to be a musician. Always.
Wow.
Now, back in the 80s, it was a thing of musician. Where's your family going to live?
Wow.
You know, how are you going to put food on the table? And then you fall into this culture of, you know, when you're done with matric, the next thing they ask is, so when you're getting a job, so you get a job, and then they ask you, and your car, and then you get a car, and they ask you the next thing, aren't you buying a house? And then you buy a house. And your girlfriend, you know what's happening here, and then you get a girlfriend.
So your purpose is more about, you know, getting money, getting married, you know, living a nice life, dying a nice death. Maybe nice people say nice things about you.
Absolutely. All the societal tick boxes. You know? Because that makes Marlon a good man.
But is it a purpose if it does not make you money? Let's speak about that.
Let's speak about that.
And speak a little bit about the purpose of business. If business does not make you money, are you in your purpose?
Yeah, that's interesting. We must understand what business means. Where does the name business come from?
Let's define that.
Yeah, so business is about occupation. It's about what occupies me.
Right.
It's about my profession or my trade. Money is the result of business. Money is not business.
Isn't that the reason?
Well, you know, people get into business to make money.
Right.
But here's what we forget. That if I have a trade... If I have a craft, and please note, it could be with my hands.
You're right, yeah.
It could be with my mind.
Yeah.
And I do that with a purpose. And when I share that purpose, at the end of it, somebody says, Marlon, I'm interested in it. Let's exchange money. How can I buy that from you? Then the exchange of money takes place.
Right.
Then the economic value comes.
Right.
But before that, there's this value add of Marlon as the creator of something, imparting that.
Would you say the purpose of business or entrepreneurship is to make money or to make a difference?
I think, look, let's just look at entrepreneurship first, because these terms we sort of throw around and it's interchangeable.
I'm an entrepreneur, but we don't actually know what that means.
An entrepreneur comes from the word entreprendre.
Right.
It's a French word, right? And it means to undertake.
Right.
So when I undertake something, we say, I'm going to take on this challenge and I'm going to take on that challenge. When I decide to undertake, I'm an entrepreneur.
Right.
Entrepreneur has got nothing to do with economic gain.
Okay.
If you look at the purest sense of the word, to undertake.
Yeah.
Because I can undertake to be the best dad.
Yeah.
I can undertake to be the best person on a football field.
I mean, that's why I was asking you when you were speaking about, especially when you were speaking about you wanted to be a musician.
Yes.
And people will disqualify you from being a musician because it's not going to make you money.
It's not going to make me money.
Even though it's going to uplift people and make a difference in people's lives, people will discourage you from pursuing that because
so purpose
you gotta be a doctor or an engineer.
Purpose
because
is about,
you gotta make money.
Absolutely. Purpose is about impact.
Impact.
Right. So it's about once I've sorted out my purpose, and we spoke about this last week.
Right.
What did Jesus do? He came with a purpose.
Yeah.
He didn't keep it himself. He shared that purpose.
Yeah, because purpose is not for us.
It's not for us.
It's for others. It's to serve others.
Absolutely. It's this greater community. So when I do business, in the context of which I understand it now, or in which it's used locally, and it's used in vocabulary, everybody says, oh, what you into? Now I'm into business. So what is it? I make money. So I go, wow, you must introduce me to that printing press. You know, some of you got a printing press. You know, it's about the skill.
Right.
It's about, I always think of how Japanese craftsmen, you know, where they spend centuries honing the craft through generations. Jesus comes and he has a very particular way of imparting his purpose. They are also shaped as artisans.
I mean, some people will say Jesus was not in business because he was not making money out of his ministry.
But it wasn't about money. we confuse that with money. Economic gain is one thing.
It's a byproduct.
It's a byproduct. The purpose of sharing my trade, you know, is that I have developed this craft. So Jesus comes and he says, you know what, guys, I just want to make a few changes here. Did you ever hear of loving each other? Did you ever hear of forgiving 70 times 7? Did you hear all these things? And they go, what are you talking about? He then takes them on a journey because he's the artisan. The apprentices. Right? He passes on the craft. It's like looking at the Bible. You know, was the Bible written to edify, to bring understanding to Jesus and his work and his Father? Or did they compile the Bible to sell it? Right?
Well, sometimes the gospel becomes another form of, profit.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately.
So, unfortunately, if you steer down the path of making that your outcome,
the Judas.
Remember when the vehicle becomes the end product, then it's an issue. Right? Then it's an issue.
Me and you, before the show, we went to grab some coffee, and I said to you offline that the reason why I go to that specific place, I don't want to advertise them, otherwise they'll have to pay for it.
Yes, very important.
You know, but the reason why I go to that specific place to buy is because, first of all, it's local, but also because they train and employ young people from disadvantaged communities. You know, so sometimes it's not about the coffee. You know, it's about the impact that my coffee makes. So I'm not really buying the product, I'm buying the why.
Correct.
You know, isn't that the purpose of business? It's not just to make profit and exploit, but it's actually to make a difference in people's lives. Because I support businesses that are socially, aware of what is happening in our society and trying to bring change.
Absolutely. Heidi and I support small businesses. We support the philosophy of development.
Right.
We support the philosophy of upliftment.
Right.
Why go and support a retailer if we can support the guy around the corner?
Right.
Because
the same grain is selling tomatoes on the side of the road.
Absolutely.
It's the same tomatoes at
because
a certain market.
Absolutely. He has gone through this process to undertake. He's an entrepreneur. He's undertaking to sell his tomatoes, and the purpose behind it is to feed his family. The purpose behind it is so that he can sustain himself. It's not the be all and end all. And that's important to understand that.
And I mean, you see it with a lot of young people who are selling on the side of the robot. And one of my friends was like, Phineas, I'd rather buy from these people because this is the reason why I buy from these guys is because I'm preventing crime. Because if I don't buy from them, what is the other option for them?
What is the option for them?
The other option for them is to go and do something.
Very interesting that you mentioned that, because we so much want to
So I'm not buying the tomatoes on the side of the road or the oranges. I'm actually preventing.
Well, I could actually say me buying tomatoes on the side of the road is supporting that person to sustain himself. It's a way of uplifting him, not just economically. But to show, you know what, as a community we have your back. It's strange that in some communities, and research has been done about this, and I won't particularly mention the community, but it says that a 1 rand coin, a 1 rand, would exchange hands 15 times within that community before it goes out of the community. Right.
So the amount of homes that it has went through and made a difference.
Absolutely, that made a difference. It's not about, you know what, this guy is going to drive a Merc at the end of the day. Bless him. If he drives the expensive car, if he lives in a fancy place. His purpose was to sustain. And I just want to, this just caught my eye. Rosalind asks and says, hi Rosalind, she says that, can you have more than one purpose? Here's the thing with having more than one purpose. It needs to be congruent. It needs to sort of move you into one direction.
Oh, right.
Because she mentions one for work, one for yourself, one for your relationship. Yes, you can have those purposes which we look at as end goals. Or we're planning our future. The question I need to ask is, it needs to come from the same driving source. It needs to come from the same source that drives us. I can't profess to be a good father, right? And then my other purpose takes me away from my kids 24/7. Personally, I've been there. I personally, years ago, working for a big retail bank, I spent my time climbing the corporate ladder. When it came to the time that when my kids were older and my kids couldn't speak to me, because they didn't know me, I didn't know them. So yes, but remember, I made that decision. So I cannot plant potatoes and expect to reap cucumbers.
And also there's a whole thing of somebody defining themselves as a farmer. I'm not gonna say I farm potatoes. I'm a farmer that farms potatoes. But what if I want to do oranges? I want to do this. I want to do that.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes we define ourselves too quickly to the point where we become confined within that identity. But as the Bible says, I can do all things through Christ. But I think you put it on the nail when you said it is very important that the source of that and the reasons why we are actually in this space are actually good. Because I always go back to when God made us, he was like, this is very good. Which tells me that we are created for goodness.
Absolutely.
Our purpose is for goodness.
So
anything that I'm doing, doesn't matter what it is, does it produce the fruits of the Spirit?
Absolutely. I think I've encountered too many people, or not too many, I've encountered many people who own businesses, and they go, you know what, Shame, this person cannot afford it. They don't have all the money right now. And guess what? They go, okay, have it. How much money do you have? No, I have 40 rand. Okay, give it to me for 40 rand. Okay, here's 40 rand. Go with it. I've seen this at the flea market on a few occasions. Then the other guy comes around 5 minutes later and says, I want that same product. And he gives you a 50 rand. And the moment you're looking for change, he says, no, it's cool, hang on to the change. Here's the thing, and it's a big word I'm going to use now, reciprocity. Right? What I give, I will receive. It's a law of nature. It's a law that God has implemented in nature.
I want to go into this. I think one of the questions that I have for you is, if I look at South Africa and I look at, because I've traveled, to other African countries, I have a lot of friends who from, Kenya, Uganda, Zimbabwe, who are very entrepreneurial in their thinking. Comparing to a lot of my friends in South Africa. And I've always wondered, why are we not entrepreneurial inclined, as South Africans and a lot of people from outside of our country, they're very entrepreneurial and they know how to survive. And off air, you spoke about, for some people in other countries, they don't have the same privileges that we do.
Yeah.
Because sometimes as South Africans, we're waiting for somebody to save us. But in other countries, some people don't have a choice but to be entrepreneurial.
Absolutely.
You go to school, after school, you go to a farm, you harvest, and then you go and sell. That's why in parts of Africa, you see a lot of kids. You could call it child labor, but there's a lot of kids who are always carrying buckets, selling.
Yes.
So from a very young age,
yes,
you know what to sell.
Absolutely.
How can we bring that to our country in terms of how we teach entrepreneurship and business and make people realize that, hey, there's a market here, and it's very important that you know the value of what you have and you know how to exchange it for profit, but also for social change?
That's a very, very interesting question. And I'm going to answer it at 2 or 3 different levels.
Yeah.
So the one level is academically.
Yeah.
When I did research and I did my PhD, I looked at how do I impact or how do I affect entrepreneurial intention?
Right.
So how do I impact somebody's thinking to allow them to understand that entrepreneurship is another vehicle,
right,
to sustain themselves?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The mere fact that it was at tertiary level, it's way too late. It is way too late. We look at that entrepreneurship is a portion of economic management sciences in your schooling system.
Yeah.
It's a portion.
Listen, I remember in primary school we used to sell stuff, sweets.
Yes, and you had your market days and look, that didn't suit me well, sweets and cake, because I would eat up my profit. Not a good idea. So that's the one thing.
Yeah.
It's way too late. I've seen documentaries. I've watched documentaries of how they start 3 and 4 year olds to play shopkeep
from a very young age.
From a very, very young age.
How do you differentiate between child labor and actually upskilling a child from a very young age to understand not really business but finances? Because I think that's another thing, is financial literacy.
Absolutely.
Because how can you learn that without business?
But before we go there, I just want to cover this topic, just this part of it.
Yeah.
So what was interesting is that we have as a society have a very, very, very low tolerance for failing entrepreneurs. Because guess what?
Yeah.
The shame of an entrepreneur failing, he loses his house, he loses his car.
Yeah.
How many stories have you heard? And that person will never go back into entrepreneurship because of the shame pointed at by the society and see what happened?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we would rather educate ourselves to go into a market that is shrinking less and less. That where that skills list or that required skill is becoming less and less and less. And yet we plow into universities and we go, this is the way. So
I remember also MEC was talking about a lot of students are going to university to learn things that are actually putting them in a space where they have to look for a job in terms of creating jobs. And he was speaking about we need more people, entrepreneurial people. We need young people who study to create jobs more than those who are looking for jobs. Because if all of us go to school to look for jobs and we don't go to school to create jobs, then we're going to end up looking at each other because, and it's going to end up being a few of us creating jobs, which is something that we don't want because unemployment in South Africa is very high.
Yeah.
So how do we create a system or an education system that breeds more entrepreneurs more than employees?
I think it's the mindset around education. You look at many universities and the classes we have been at, very few are 2nd or 3rd generation university students.
Right.
Out of their families.
Right.
Many of them are 1st generation.
Right.
Attending university. University degree in this country is regarded as the sort of pinnacle of education.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
So even though you're unemployed afterwards, don't worry, you have. So we'll be having, like Botswana many years ago, the most highly qualified educationally unemployed group in the world. Right. So Tell you a little story.
Yeah.
Father says to the guy, lives his dream through the son, says, you're going to be an engineer. Son says, oh, Dad.
You're going somewhere. You're going to trigger some parents here.
Right. So you, absolutely. You're gonna,
I was not a doctor, so you're going to be a doctor.
Correct. And you're going to go sit in class and you're going to do X, Y, and Z. This young man wanted to be a plumber. Right? So he sits through his first semester, flunks everything, no interest in it.
Wow.
Here's the thing. He then takes his money from his second semester and goes on a plumbing course.
Wow.
His father says, end of the year results, I'm going to disown you. You were supposed to be at university. He says, I'm a plumber.
Yeah.
This young man, long story short, falls in love with plumbing to the extent that he studies medieval plumbing. He then years later becomes the only person in Europe, in Western Europe, to fix the plumbing problems of castles.
What?
And he becomes a multimillionaire.
And it's very funny how we look down on jobs or look down on people
vocational
who are plumbers.
Yes.
You know,
vocational occupations.
Yeah, we like this is but actually there's a lot of money there, and actually those people are the people that makes us or helps us function as a society, because without plumbers, without carpenters, without all these people that we look down on, our society should not function. And that goes to how do we encourage our young people not to always glorify being in an office and think that's a cool job, you know, because sometimes, you know, being a farmer is actually even, you know,
a better job.
A better job than actually sitting in an office and being depressed.
And I think it's driven by ideologies and sort of goals from a generation, our parents, our great-grandparents.
I mean, you said something very important, that sometimes it's the pressure of the society and the pressure of you need to get money, as much money as you can get, or that my parents didn't become doctors, now I have to become. I think it's the pressure sometimes.
Absolutely.
That we end up choosing the bag over our purpose.
And I've heard that parents have bragging rights with their kids being at uni. Oh, my child is at university. You know, he's doing so well. He's now second or third year university.
Yeah.
You know, so that's extra pressure. It's again about the purpose. It's again about, I know a GP that finished his studies, but he's into arc welding.
Wow.
Because he loves that.
He loves it.
Yes.
He loves it. It's not and I think it's very important for me. I think something that I'm trying to get across when it comes to entrepreneurship or when it comes to careers, that the goal is not always to get the bag. You know, the bag sometimes becomes a byproduct of pursuing what you're passionate about and what you really love, and in the middle of all of that thing ends up making a difference in people's life, and of course it may ends up making a difference in your bank account. But the pursuit of happiness, I would say, is not the bag. It's about purpose. It's about making a difference.
Absolutely.
You know, in other people's life, but also in your life as well.
It's about what.
But how do we rewire that mindset that it's not always about the bag? The bag is important. We gotta pay the bills.
Yeah, but remember, it's because I missed the bag. It's because I, as the father and the mother, didn't have the opportunities. And I say this as a father. You know, I listen to my kids' choices. The youngest is studying music. A jazz singer, and I go, I hope you're very good, because this is you're going to have to earn a keep from this. But there are more jobs unfolding as technology, as the world opens up more in terms of what the populace requires than what we can keep up with. Here's a good example. So in my life, I'm an academic. My in-laws looked at me and says, but why is this guy at home all the time? When we come and visit my daughter, why is he at home?
He's with the books.
Why is he? He's either sleeping or he's standing around, or, you know, says to my in-laws, says to my missus, you know, you okay? What was this guy doing? Doesn't he work? But they didn't understand that the world evolved. You know, it doesn't need to be a 9 to 5. Purpose is not always in the package in which you expect it to be.
Right.
The action. So we talk about
And is purpose always something that you like? Because some people think I need to like something to know that it's my purpose. But sometimes I feel like, God calls us to do things that we don't like for a greater purpose.
Yeah.
It's like it's Jesus dying for us. I mean, it was not there. That's the purpose, but I don't think it's something. I mean, it's not something that he really wanted to do. That's why he got to a point where I'm like, if you can take this cup from me, please do. But let your will be done.
Here's an interesting part in what you're just saying. Just for the last few weeks, right? That I've realized, and I journaled it last night.
Yeah.
And this is what I journaled: that today I will stop telling God what my purpose is and just allow it to play out. Because no matter how many times I try and not live into the purpose into which I want, and rather live into the purpose that He wants for me, then this turmoil will end. Then this battle will end. Then the struggle will end.
Right.
Because He sets out the purpose. I don't determine the purpose. I live the purpose. Right?
Wow.
So because it's within me, I need to live it out. So that for me is the important part. That for me brings about this idea that I want to create my own purpose. Here's the warning. I'm going to waste time. I'm going to waste valuable time.
Because of time, guys, man, I think one thing about this show that I really love is we get to have these discussions, but time is always not on our side all the time. And I just want to go into what Moses Jacobs is talking about, that sometimes we live in a society where it's not that people don't want to create businesses, but there's people who thrive out of our business.
Yes.
And he speaks about gangsterism in our communities where people are policed. People have to pay tax. And people stop creating businesses because they don't want to be taxed. And it makes me realize that within a business there's a business.
Yes.
There's an opportunity for someone else. How do we avoid that? How do we live in a society where we're creating opportunities for people, but we don't allow ourselves to be exploited? Because in business, let's be honest, there's a lot of exploitation. There's cheap labor. There's all these things. What is the model of a good business in a community?
I think, and thank you, Moses, for reaching out and making, and sending us this WhatsApp. I think what's important is that as a society, we are not standing together for the purpose of the society. We are. Look, I remember back in the day before 1994, they had on the coin, unity is strength.
Yes.
Right? What is happening in our societies is the society allowing this to happen. Right? That if the society stands together and they don't break rank, and they don't hold the line, then we're going to find these elements entering. We're going to find them all around the world.
So all these things are a symptom of a broken society.
Of what is happening in society.
Right.
I've seen in certain societies where gangsterism is rife, where the one road.
But also when gangsterism is actually a business itself.
It's a business itself.
But it thrives out of exploitation of
Absolutely.
others. But how do we create business that do not exploit people?
So, and I just want to complete the thought. So when you find that in a community where gangsterism is rife, gangsters won't dare coming down the one road.
Right.
Because the residents of that particular road has taken up a stance. Right? They've taken up the stance and they have a greater purpose. Right? And yes, that these are driven and again, let's move away from business. Because it's about economic gain. Gangsterism, unlawful ways of ensuring economic gain. Right? It's a craft, it's a trade that people have exploit others.
Yeah, and I just want to say this and acknowledge Moses Jacobs. We do see your WhatsApp. You are texting to the right number.
Yes.
You know, we love the what you're sharing, and it's very complex. My brother, and I think I would like to have a conversation with you on the side about it. But we really thank you for speaking about, you know, gangsterism as a form of business, but actually the heart behind it is not really to empower the community, but to exploit. And it's not just in gangsterism itself. There's a lot of models of businesses in the world in housing.
Absolutely.
You know where housing is unaffordable.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know what? One of the things that where my expertise lie would be in business modeling.
Yeah.
Right? So every enterprise, and I want to use the proper words.
Yeah.
Every enterprise for economic gain or profit or non-profit has a business model, a sort of underlying philosophy of what they bring to the table or what they want to bring to the end user. So even when we look at gangsters, when we look at those that are in prostitution, the porn industry, we look at all these taboo industries that for many South Africans, they would put their heads, we got our heads in the sand.
And sometimes I feel like business sometimes thrives out of addiction. We get people so addicted to things to the point where they have no choice but to keep on coming back for the high. And the high may not be even a drug. Could be anything good that is extremely being, misused.
You know what is the greatest legal drug at the moment? Consumerism.
Ooh.
Consumerism.
Ooh.
That of I want instant gratification. I want.
I mean, I studied advertising and marketing. We were taught to psychologically learn how to manipulate people and keep on bringing people back. You get them addicted, you keep them on the leash, they keep on coming back for the drug.
Absolutely.
And they keep on buying over and over again. And sometimes we think it's because people love this thing. But it's not because people love the product, it's just because it's because they're addicted to it.
Absolutely.
And we were speaking about other, clothing brands. I'm not going to mention names, where we were like, sometimes the identity of the brand almost defines us as human beings. And we intentionally make sure that defines you so that you feel like you cannot live without that brand.
I'm gobsmacked when I walk in a mall and I see somebody head to toe in the apparel of a famous sporting brand. Then I go, wow. Because I remember some time back in my studies when I did marketing, and there was a part within branding where they actually explained how per square centimeter a sports star would be paid to have that branding.
And also I think even Christianity can become a brand that we
absolutely
wear and not a brand that we live.
Absolutely. Because it's all about that existential. It's all about the external.
The perception.
How
do people see me? How do people
absolutely
treat me?
It's when Jesus says, when you fast, wash up, man.
But also there's a thing that people address you based on how you dress. So sometimes if they see all those, brands on you, they're like, okay, this must be a person of high regard. So I need to treat them in a certain way. So brands sometimes can open doors or shut down doors, I guess.
Look, the mere fact that you get impressed by the brand shows me that what type of person you are.
Ooh, identity.
Then it's not just about my identity. It's about your identity that you projected onto me.
And as business owners, we see that, and then we can use that to exploit.
Absolutely. So now I see this young person walking around, and I add up the clothing, and I go, that's at least 7,000 rand walking there.
Living in a bungalow.
Being unemployed.
Okay. We're going somewhere here. We have about 5 minutes to kind of wrap up the whole thing. In principle, looking at the life of Jesus, what makes a good business?
So what makes
a good entrepreneur?
A good entrepreneur driven by a spirit-led purpose. That purpose, that kingdom that's within you. That's the first thing.
Right.
Whatever you deliver, the product or the service, let you as the entrepreneur must share that creative power that brought about the product or the service.
Right.
It leaves a part in you. The creator that created me left some of his characteristics within me.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the one making the food.
Yeah.
Why does the one pot taste different to the other one, even though the ingredients are exactly the same?
Yeah.
It's the love that went into it. It's the patience that went into it.
And it's the effort that we pay for sometimes. It's not just the food that we pay for.
Absolutely. So that's the second thing, right?
Yeah.
So we have this purpose, the spirit-led purpose. That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two is, what do I put into my product?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then number three is that how do the consumers of my service or product, how do they enjoy it?
How do they enjoy it?
Because they are the ones paying for the value.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the moment, the tables are turned on us.
Yeah. And they're paying that because they enjoy it. They're not paying that because they're addicted to it.
Absolutely. I've paid people more than what they've charged.
Whew.
Why? Because I could see the effort involved.
I think sometimes that's why some people will give you even tips as a form of appreciation, that actually you thought this was 10 rand, but I'm going to add a little bit of 30 rand there because this is worth 50 rand.
Yeah.
But it's not something that I put a price on, but it's out of the generosity and the appreciation of the art that I've produced.
And again, this reciprocity. Again, this what I give is what I receive without expecting to receive. That's the important part. So I give out of the nature.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the beauty of it. And somebody can say, but Marlon, I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
And I go, when you do the books, do you pray about it? Right? I'm an engineer.
And then if you find a little bit of corruption there, do you speak about it?
Do you speak about it? Do you
or you just allow money in that you don't even know where it comes from? So you can be an accountant and make a difference.
Absolutely.
In a form of being accountable.
I look at writing my book. I did not write my book to sell. For money. I didn't want to get wealthy off the book.
Yeah.
It was about me sharing out of my life.
Yeah.
With somebody else that it would resonate with.
Yeah.
Because if I'm doing this for just selling the book, guess what? The book is eventually going to find itself on the shelf where there's dust.
So the purpose of the book was not to make profit, was to make a difference.
To make a difference.
And the difference sometimes is not financial.
Absolutely. It's about the value add to the life of the one who did the exchange.
I mean, you're a doctor. This knowledge, sometimes people get paid to share this knowledge. But out of your generosity, you've chosen to be here.
Let me just tell you, I've been invited to quite a few parties to share my IP. Then I go, no, this is not the platform.
Yeah, this is not the platform.
Yeah, look, this is my rate.
Yeah.
Pay for me. Yeah. Pay my rate. And guess what?
Yeah.
That very person would go pay another individual.
So there's ministry in our purpose. There's the ministry
absolutely
in our purpose.
Because and I think it comes with the recognition that the gift that I have, I share that gift out of love.
Out of love.
I share that gift. I'm a strategist by trade. I'm a life coach and all these other things. And I sit down and I go, please, Lord, how is my purpose going to be advantage to my client?
How is it going to make their lives better?
How is it going to make their lives better? How is it going to open their eyes? Because it might not make their life better, because I might bring them to an awareness of truth.
I think sometimes we confuse value and wealth, or I think the value of things, the fact that we define the value of things by an exchange of money, I think that's where we got it wrong. Something can still be available without a tag on it, a price tag on it. But sometimes we feel like we need to put a price tag on something for it to have value. I think that's where we have missed it. It's the same thing as purpose and the same thing as ministry. And it has to have a price tag on it to know that it's valuable.
Here's an interesting thing, and there's two things I want to close off with from my side. So the one thing would be salvation, there's no price tag on it.
Yeah.
The only price you got to pay is to submit. That's the only price you got to pay. That's the only price.
Somebody says salvation is free, but discipleship comes with a cost.
There's a cost.
Of laying down your life.
Absolutely. Of sitting in that moment in the quiet. and really understanding and being vulnerable.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that I would like to end off with is to say that if you want to make contact with me, my mobile number to make contact with me is 073 011 5617. I repeat that, 073 011 5617. My social handle on YouTube, my YouTube channel is Dr. Marlon Hoffman. The same goes for my Facebook. It's just search for Dr. Marlon Hoffman. And you'll get it. So
and I think there's an answer to prayer here, because Auntie Rosemary is speaking about a podcast. If we have a podcast to speak further about these things, I want to say that Dr. Marlon's dream to start a podcast and speak more about this thing so that he can educate others. So if you follow him on his social medias, you will be surprised that one day we may have something. And me and him will go in depth about the things that we're actually speaking about. But I want to say thank you so much to every single person that has been listening to the show. We love the engagement on WhatsApp. Somebody's asking if we have a copy of the show. We can speak with our producer about that to see if it can be made available.
It will all be on my socials by tomorrow.
Yeah. So Dr. Marlon has your back. So if you follow him on Instagram, you follow him on Facebook
and on
YouTube, you will get to re-listen to some of the things that we're speaking about. So from myself, my brothers and sisters, and Dr. Marlon, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to say. And
last thought.
Yeah.
Just be blessed.
Be blessed.
Stand still in the moment and just thank God and thank your Creator for everything that He has done up until this very moment.
And business is not about making profit. It's also, it's about making profit, but it's also about making a difference.
Absolutely.
In people's lives. So whatever business that you're running, the question is, are you making a difference in people's lives? Or is your business only making a difference in your bank account? I think that's a very important question. But from myself, same time, same place, next week on Tuesday from 6 until 7 on the dot. God bless you and thank you so much for being with us this evening.